Okay everybody, welcome back to part 2. So as you can see, I've already changed the shape of the head here. You can see just a slight change in this area here. And I'm going to show you how I did that, but I'm going to show you on the body of the guitar. The body is more interesting, you can learn more because the body's a more interesting shape. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch off the layers that we don't need. So I'm going to switch off the layer of the neck, and I'm going to switch off the layer of the head as well. And I'm going to come up here to this area right here. I'm going to press to select the body. Once I've got the body selected, I will come up here to filter. I will come down to liquify, and this is where we make our changes. So it'll take a wee second for liquify to load up, but liquify is a little program inside of Photoshop, and within liquify we can make the changes that we need to make to get a new body shape. Okay, so that's it loaded up. First thing I want to do is make the body just a little bit bigger. So I'm just pinching the zoom. Okay, so this is a good size for us to start working on. But before we start making any changes, I'll explain some of the tools inside of Liquify. So up here we have the forward warp tool, and this is the tool we use the most to make the changes. And you can get to this tool just by pressing W, or you can come up here and press. And we can change the size of this tool with the bracket keys. So open bracket makes it smaller, close bracket makes it bigger. Just keep tapping to go bigger or smaller. Okay, so I've got the forward warp tool now, and with the forward warp tool I can push and pull on the guitar. So just for a quick demonstration of how it works, you can see I'm pushing it in. I've got that shape. I'm going to just undo that with Control Z, and I'm going to pull now. This time I'm going to pull it out, and you can see it's made it more pointed there. And I'll do the same thing, just undo that change. Basically what you're doing is pushing the pixels. So some of the other things that we can do with the brush is we can come over to here and we can change the actual pressure of the brush and the density. So imagine that this forward warp tool is like, it's like a painter's brush. By changing the pressure, it's like you're making the bristles stiffer, and by changing the density you're making more of those bristles, and that allows you to make bigger changes or smaller changes depending on what you need to do. At the minute we are sort of sat in the middle. I could lower this down a little bit. So by lowering this one down, it makes the middle of the tool. So if you can see, you've got this outer circle here around the brush, and the higher up this density is, the more the outside of the circle has control over the pixels. If I put it up, you can see that I've only pushed in halfway to the middle, and already we've got a big change there. Let's undo that, and let's have a look if we lower it down. So it's down at 16 now, and you can see that it doesn't have nearly as much effect. I'm going to undo that again, and this time I'm going to come to the middle of the brush, and with the middle of the brush I'm going to make the same change, and you can see that it pushes so much harder. So that's kind of how this works. And this pressure is basically just like a global setting. The higher you put this pressure, the more change you can affect. Another thing that is important whenever you're working inside of Liquify is the size of your brush. So if I am trying to make a change here on this horn, this is a good size of brush to use. But if the brush was a lot bigger, say the brush was this size, this is way too big, especially if we've got the density turned up a bit. So you already can see what's going to happen. If I make a change to the horn, because the brush is so big, it's also going to change the heel block there of the neck. Now the same thing applies if we go too small. What ends up happening is we get a change that is kind of lumpy. You can see that we've just created a dip right on the edge. So let's undo that, and let's make this brush a better size for working on this area. So if I make the brush this size and I make a change, you can see how much more subtle the bigger brush makes the change in this area. So we do have to think about this whenever we make changes. But you know, after a few minutes of doing this, it'll start to become quite intuitive what you got to do. Okay, there is one more tool over here that we really need to talk about, and it's this tool here. It's called the freeze mask tool. So with this tool selected, we can protect certain areas of the picture. So for instance, whenever we make these changes, we don't want to change the location of the pickups. Okay, we don't want to change the location of the bridge. We may not want to change the location of this here. We definitely do not want to change this area. If we make this area too small, the neck won't fit the guitar properly. So we are going to protect this whole area right here. So for me, this is enough area to protect. So we've just zoomed in here on the horn, and I am going to protect this area here. So this area is now protected. I'm going to switch back to the warp tool, and I'm going to make a change here so that we can really see what happens. So I'm going to keep just pressing this in, and you can see what's happening now. We are pressed it in, but it cannot go no further. So this area underneath here is protected. You can see that the edge of the pickguard is not losing its shape. No matter how much we press here, it won't lose its shape. Okay, so I want to undo those changes. So I'm just undoing them with Control Z, and I'm zooming back out a bit. I'm going to press F to get the freeze tool, and I am going to protect this area as well. Okay, so it's time for us to start making our changes to the body shape. So I'm just going to do some simple stuff here, and this is really just a demonstration. This is more than likely not a body shape that I'm going to keep. This is just for this video. And I'm just going to focus on just straightening out these lines just a little bit. Okay, so I've just had a 5 minute break, and I've come back and looked at it, and for an initial look, yeah, I'm happy with what we got so far. So the next thing I'm going to do is just go and have a look at it with the neck attached and the head to see what that all looks like. So I've just come down here and pressed the OK button. So that's us back into Photoshop, and I'm just going to switch on the other layers here. So I'm going to put on the neck layer, and I'll put on the head as well. Okay, so I'm happy with how that looks. At this stage, I just want to make a quick save. So I'm going to press Control S, and that will save the work. So it's still very obviously a Telecaster shape, so I think I want to still make some more changes. I made some more alterations. I kind of felt like it still looked too much like a Telecaster, so I basically made the bottom half of the guitar, this area here, I made it a lot more rounded. And now that I look at it, I can see that from one side to the other, it's slightly different. It's not too far away, but it's just like this side, I think, is a little nicer than this side. This side looks a little bit square just here, where this is very like a nice round shape. So this will probably happen to you as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this like a mirror image. So to do this, we can make a duplicate. So what we want to do is we want to make sure we've got the body selected. Control J will make a duplicate layer of it, and what we're going to do is press Control T. Control T puts this little blue box around it. This is called free transform. So we can resize this and do things like that in here, but we don't want to do that. What we want to do is flip it horizontal. So we can do like rotation here, clockwise, counterclockwise, flip horizontal, or flip vertical. So what we're going to do is flip horizontal. Alright, so you can see what has happened. We've basically flipped it over, and now we have the mirror image of what we originally had. And if you look down here, you can see that this side is nice and curved as well, and that's exactly what we want. So from here, we want to start hiding all the parts of this that we don't want. So we are still in free transform. You can tell that because the blue box is around it. If you come up here to the top, press here to save the change that you just made. You can also just press the enter button, and that will do the same thing. So what I am going to do is I'm just going to turn on and off these layers and see what happens. Alright, so we have a little bit of this layer sticking out just down here that we want to get rid of. So on this layer, we are going to make a mask. This is the mask here. We click this, and then we press B for brush. You can also come up here for brush. We make sure that we are working on top of the mask and not over here. If you see, there's a little box around this one, and then if I click on this, the box will appear over here. We want to make sure the box is on this side. So with this masking tool, we can basically hide the areas that we don't want to see again. So just to make it even more clear what we're doing here, I'm going to switch off the neck, and I'll switch off the head as well. So the only two layers that we have now that we can see is the two body layers, and we are working on the underbody layer. So I'm going to hide the top body layer by just pressing the little eyeball here, and we're going to make sure that we've got black selected here. So if your black is down here, press these little arrows here, and that will switch from left to right. If you don't have black for whatever reason, you need to come here and press, and then just slide it down to anywhere on the bottom here, and that's how you get black. If you want to get white, slide it up to the top and get white. Whenever we draw black on top of one of these masks, it hides it. It makes it invisible. So what I am going to do is just this sort of bottom area from about here. I'm going to start drawing on this, and this is going to start becoming invisible. So for me, I was actually on a different type of brush there. So what you can do in Photoshop, if you hold these tools, it'll give you more versions of the tool that you can pick from. I'm looking for the brush tool. So this is what was wrong basically. You can see that I'm basically making that invisible. So I'm going to just take the flow up to full, and that will be enough for me. I'm going to make that a wee bit bigger. Okay. Let's turn this one back on and see what we got there. Okay, perfect. So whenever we turn this layer back on, you can see what is happening. We are actually getting the same problem, but now it's on this side because this is the mirror image version of this. So what we are going to do is we are going to start removing most of this side. So what we need to do is click on this body up here. This is the one this is the top body layer. We're going to add a mask to it. We'll make sure the mask is selected, and we are going to start fixing this. So you can see that from one side to the other we have the same. And what's actually happening is we are just making this one layer invisible, and we are starting to reveal what's underneath this layer. So we're basically making the horn now invisible. So from the waist, from the waist down is where I want to remove. Okay, if we want to bring back our little control panel, I'm going to just zoom in. I'm going to make my brush much smaller so that I can work here on this. So by pressing X, we can actually switch between white and black. So I'm going to press X. I'm going to make sure that I'm on this layer down here. This is the body layer, and I'm going to bring back this control panel. Let me just hide this so I can actually see what I'm doing. So I'm bringing back the control panel, but I definitely do not want to bring back the edge of the guitar. So I'm just being careful how I do that. Alright, so I'm going to press X once again. I'm going to come back to this layer here, and I'm going to turn this layer on, and I'm going to hide this part of the guitar. So basically we're just making an invisible hole. If I turn this off, you will see what's actually happening here. We are literally making an invisible hole through this little section of guitar here. Turn this back on. This is underneath, so that's why we're getting to see this again. Alright, what I'm going to do is I'm going to increase the size of the brush. I'm going to come over to here, and this is where we can choose how hard or soft we want the brush. So by making the brush very, very hard, what ends up happening is we get a hard edge around the edge, and we cannot blend with this, so we want to make it really, really soft. We also want to come to the flow, and we want to bring the flow right down. So just by clicking on flow and then moving left or right, we can change how quick the paint comes off the brush. We want it to be like this is good, 8%. And we are just going to blend this right here as well. Let's just blend this. So let's stick the neck back on and let's have a look and see what we got. Yeah, that looks great. I'm very, very happy with that. And I'll put the head on. So I think I will make some more changes to the head because I'm happy with the body. I just want to tweak the head slightly to make it a wee bit more pleasing. It's a wee bit too pointy, especially now that we've made the body so round. We definitely, this is out of place to me. So I want to just touch on a few little details. If you remember, whenever we were in Liquify and we brushed the red freeze tool on the middle of the guitar here to protect certain areas, well, I did the same thing up here as well. So I used the freeze tool to protect the location of all of these machine heads. I protected the nut and I protected the truss rod cover. So I'm going to bring the head back into Liquify. So I'm really happy with the overall guitar that we have here in front of us. So at this point, I'm going to hit the save button. So Control S, that saves it. Okay guys, that is it for part 2. So in part 3, we're going to turn this into a set of lined plans. So if you've enjoyed this, subscribe, hit the like button, and join me again for part 3. Thanks for watching.